All right, welcome back to another story from the summit. So excited to highlight this powerful young man, Malachi Smith, a senior from Ohio, who's a member of our Apogee Strong team. Coach Matt, you got a ton of success and a ton of experience with Malachi. I'll just pass it right over to you, man.
Oh, this is easy. This is easy. This is super fun. I mean, every week I get to connect with some of these young men, the best young men on the planet. And what's super fun, and Malachi, you know this because I've told you guys this on the call before too. But what's super fun is a lot of times off camera or when these mentors afterwards, they'll reach out via text or via DM and they'll be like, "Hey, what just happened?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I know what they're talking about, but I want to hear them say it. I'm like, you tell me what you're saying. And they're like, that was awesome. Those young guys are amazing. I feel there's like some version of like, I feel good about the future. Oh my gosh, I'm fine now that I have daughters. I feel like there's young men for them. Like I'll get some version of that too. And it's not uncommon for you to come up by name too, man. So it's not, and that has nothing to do with the fact other than that you are a stud of a human. So thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit, Malachi. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Glad to do it. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, man,
Yeah,
100%.
so let's get right into it, man. So give us a quick backstory. Like, how did you find Apogee, and why did you decide to jump into the Apogee Strong program?
Yeah, so I'm homeschooled, and one of the best parts about being homeschooled is the way we can set up our own schedules. So once we reach high school, a lot of what we do is autonomous of my parents. So we have a kind of a set curriculum, and you kind of go along with the books that your previous siblings have done. But my mom likes to go deeper into our own interests and be like, what do you like doing? Let's find you a course that relates to that. So for the first 2 years of high school, mine was history. I did U.S. history, I did AP World History, and I really enjoyed that. I liked doing that. And so junior year, we did the same thing. Senior year, she was like, okay, you're going to graduate this year. You're going to move into manhood, adulthood. You've got things you want to do. Is there a course we can find that could get you prepared for that? And we looked at a lot of different places. Some of them were a little too focused on a certain career. They were like meant to move you into a certain career path. And I, at that time, didn't know what I wanted to do yet. And so we had looked at Praxis, and Praxis, a great organization. They've got a really good setup there. And we looked at that, and we were thought, okay, this could be cool. Maybe we'll look into that. But through Praxis, we were able to find Apogee. And my mom was looking at it. She was sending me texts, and she was like, hey, this looks really cool. There's all these mentors. She was naming them, people that we both like listening to. She's like, they've done calls here. There's all these guys. The description sounds really cool. And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. There's a lot of questions I still have, and I feel like this kind of setup with the mentors and all the input and the challenges is really going to help me through that. So yeah, we were like, okay, well, let's start Apogee Strong. So I came in with a couple of goals I wanted to get into, but that was kind of the path that led us into starting this course.
So rad, man. And so cool to hear. It's so cool to hear parents who get it too, because, and I say that biased, yes, wrong, I don't think so. I've worked with enough over the course of a couple of decades. They get it. They understand education, and education just means growth, and they understand the need to cover, those meta skills as well as touch on the individual of who that is. And you mentioned siblings. How many siblings do you have?
So I have 8 siblings.
Exactly.
Seven of them are girls. One of them's a boy. So the boys are outnumbered in the house, but it's a good time.
It is a good time, and that's why I ask, because that's amazing, man. And I love seeing families that are doing things so dang well, and so kudos to the entire crew over there. And it's fun. Now I got a couple history buffs that I'm sitting here as definitely third place on the history knowledge uh, totem pole right here, man. And you mentioned career too, and so I want to kind of go into um, some of the wins you've had within Apogee too, but mentioned ever since we talked about career, what are you thinking of right now? I know the answer to this, but I want everybody to hear it. Where are you thinking of going, future wise?
Yeah, as of now, I'm looking into law enforcement, and it wasn't my first choice. It was never my main choice, but I think that's one of the great parts about Apogee. One of the questions I went into was, what do I want to do? What, do I want to go into a 4-year college? Do I want to go into law and, be in college for 6+ years? What do I want to do here? And one of the great things about Apogee was when I went into it first, I was like, okay, what do I want to do? And I almost expected someone to be like, hey, you'd be good at this. But then I realized that's not how it works. What I had to do was to say, here's my interest, here's my skills, here's what I'm good at, and I lined it out. And then I was like, I'm interested in this path, and automatically I had people there who were like, hey, I've done this, I've been there. Here's some tips. And so it's been through a lot of input from a lot of the Apogee guys, especially the men who've been in law enforcement. And they've been telling me stuff, and it's been like, yeah, this is something I think I want to do. So, a short answer, law enforcement. That's what I'd like to do.
So,
So
so
right.
thank you, Malachi, for totally reinforcing the I was homeschooled, so I'm socially awkward. I can't speak very well.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
like to
Yeah,
make eye
yeah, right.
contact.
There goes
I mean,
that.
just destroying that.
Goes that
One
out
of
the
my
window.
as we decided to homeschool our youngest son, one of the things I asked Matt, I was like, "Is he going to be like socially weird if we do this?" And he goes, "Are you weird? Do you think you'd let him be weird?" And I'm like, "No," but I love when I meet a young man like you, and I'm like, "Yeah, exactly that. That's why we're doing this, is
That's
so
it.
they talk like that." So
Totally.
anyway, thank you for being who you are. It's an exciting thing to us to see the success you've had. But hey, man, brag a little bit, like just a little bit. Biggest success since you've started the Apogee Strong program for you personally, right? Whether that be something you did in the program or just a result of it, what do you think is the biggest success for you personally?
Yeah, I'd say it's along that vein there. I've had lots of small things that have helped. I'd say, you know, one of the best parts about Apogee is kind of it helps reinforces my foundation. So, but that's kind of a broad answer. That it's helping me here, it's helping me there. These small things I'm lacking, it helps me raise it all up a level. But I'd say the main thing goes along with what I was saying just a second ago about the input from everybody into law enforcement. So at the beginning of the school year, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a bunch of different options, but the main problem was that I wasn't acting. So I was saying, oh, this kind of sounds cool. Maybe that could kind of be cool. I don't know. And I was just putting it off for the next day, be like, oh, I'll figure that out halfway through my senior year. And so joining Apogee, talking to all these guys, I was like, you know what? I actually think I want to do law enforcement. And I think, it's time I start doing something. And so I had just started working out 5 days a week at a gym in my hometown. And I'd gone in first day with my dad to check it out. And the first person I met there was the police chief of my town of Doylestown. He's an amazing guy. He's just an incredible person. And from the start, when my dad told him, "Oh yeah, my son over here, he wants to go into law enforcement," he just kind of took me in. He got me scheduled for ride-alongs, and so I've been doing ride-alongs with them. He's just teaching me so much, and I feel so confident about what I wanted to do. Because when you first start out, maybe a cop, and then you get people telling you, "Oh, it's dangerous," "Oh, but what about this? You might change your mind." That's a kid's dream. But actually getting to talk with him and being with him and the other officers has just been incredible. And so I feel like I got a purpose, I got a place to go, and it's just been an incredible experience all around there. So I'd say that's my big victory.
It's huge, man. It is that and thank you for saying that too, because you understood the need to take action. And then, hey, by the way, you did it. The LEO interviews are something that everybody goes through, and it just so happened to work out to where you want to go down that route too. But there is such value in taking those interviews, having those experiences, even if it confirmed for you that you didn't want to go into law enforcement. It would have been a great thing, right? It would have been something. And we've had young men, and it's gone, I can think of one in particular who really came in thinking law enforcement was the route. And then in conversation, and then in going and doing his LEO interviews, he went, shoot, okay, I don't know if that's exactly the route I want to go yet. And during other conversations with other guys and other interviews, he's now going into the military first, and he wants to come out and maybe go, go the MP route and maybe go, great, that made sense for him. Right. And so it's understanding yes, no, but there's those connections, like it matters no matter what. You mentioned the foundations too, and it's one of my favorite parts about getting on the calls every week is everybody, all the mentors that come in, they're all so different. They got such different backgrounds. They come from so many different areas, but we start to see patterns. We start to see some of these patterns that play out, whether they're a CEO over here or they're a, professional athlete over here, or like we see these patterns emerge. those foundations, a lot of times we look at our foundation as kind of the code. And we talk about the Apogee code, that Bushido code, integrity and bravery and compassion, politeness, um, honor, honesty, loyalty. So if you're looking at the code and you've got to pick one that's kind of your North Star right now out of all of those, what would you say that's been? I would say, I want to throw this out there publicly. You are a young man that embodies all of those to me. And I think you do an extraordinary job with that. Is there one that you feel like you lean into more often than the others?
Hmm. Yeah, the hard part about this question is the Apogee code. All of the parts there, all of
Oh.
the individual things that you give an oath to, they're all good.
Mhm.
There's you see some people, they've got like, this is my oath, or these are the things I'm going to uphold, and some of the terms they give are kind of wishy-washy, and it's like, oh, I'm going to be a nicer person. It's like, what does that mean? I don't know. But the thing about the Apogee code is all of these words are really strong. So it's a little difficult to kind of pick one. If I had to, I'd say I would go for integrity. I feel like that word out of all the others kind of encompasses most, or it encompasses best what I'm trying to achieve, what I'm trying to grow into this year. I want to, 18 years old, graduating this year, I can now go anywhere in the world and do anything I want. Basically, I can go get a job any place. There's a lot of things I can do, but to do that and to come out well at the end, I'm gonna need to have integrity. And so there's just a
Mhm.
lot of different parts. So you'll be like, well, in this situation, what do I need? I need integrity. Well, over here, I got this problem. What do I need? I need integrity.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that's something I really wanna hammer into myself. I want to have that ingrained, written into who I am, so that when things come, it's like, okay, I've already been through this. I've already got what I need. I got the integrity to get through this problem.
I
So let
love it,
me
man.
let me ask you this, because integrity is one of those words that, like, everybody thinks they have it. Everybody thinks they know what it means. Almost to the point that it doesn't mean anything in the world at large, right? What does integrity mean to you? If you had to give like a working definition, like, hey, here's what integrity means to me. So integrity, obviously, I mean, I would agree, you're a very integrous young man, really, at this point. But what does it mean to you? What is the definition of that word integrity for you? What does that mean? Defining terms is huge in the whole movement, but also right now with you.
Yeah. So integrity, like you said, there's a lot of different definitions you could pull to that. The kind of one that resonates with me is, it's easy to listen to something. It's easy to hear what other people say. It's easy to read something and be like, oh yeah, I agree with that. That's something I believe is true. This is something, I like that. But I feel like integrity is actually taking that and taking the words that you say, the things you say that you believe, and be like, I'm going to do that. So I have all these different beliefs. I have all these different things that I like to see. I like to see, I want to see honor here. I want to see honesty here. I want to see compassion here. I love those things, and there should be more of them in the world. Integrity is me saying, well, I have these beliefs. This is something I hold. I'm going to do it. And it's going from that passive state of just belief into an action state and actually doing something about what you say you're going to do.
I freaking love it. I mean, you said earlier, like there was one, and I just love hearing this because I think this is one of the most important questions that anybody can ask anybody else. And I think it's one of the most important questions that anybody can ask themselves. And you said this earlier when you started to talk about the code. You said, okay, well, people say this, and this. Well, what does that mean? I want to be a nicer version of myself or whatever, right? But what does that mean? That is always the question. What does that mean? Because we speak so often in platitudes and we let ourselves off the hook from defining what that means. And I would agree with you. Integrity is the act of actually defining what it means and what it looks like in tangible action and then taking that action. I'm right there with you. And I love the fact that you asked that question. I wish I could only, there's a lot of things, if I could go back and be 18, there's a lot of things I would change to point towards being more like Malachi, because I was so not where you are at 18 in terms of who I was. But man, I would ask myself that question a whole lot more. So I love that you asked that, man. Um, Coming out of the family that you have, and this is an interesting question because we have kind of a series of questions that we like to ask on here too, right? Whether we have affiliates or coaches, mentees, whatever that looks like. And when we have the adults that are in here and they're launching campuses, this is an interesting question. Like, talk to me about, battle scars, getting punched in the face. Because when you're launching a business, man, like you're gonna get punched in the face. Do you look at anything right now? And this, there may be just a flat out like, no, not really right now. And I don't, but I'm curious. Is there a time where you feel like, okay, I kind of got beat up a little bit. I kind of got punched in the face by life a little bit. I had to kind, and then you sort of found yourself coming out the other side because you leaned into some of these principles. Like, have you felt like you've gotten punched in the face yet, or been spared from that somewhat thus far? How do you look at that?
Yeah, I can't say that I've had a time where, oh, the sky's falling,
Yeah.
I'm just getting swept out from underneath my feet, everything's
Yeah.
beyond my control. There have been a lot of moments in my life where I've been like, man, this is hard.
Sure.
But I like to look at that and be like, okay, this was difficult. It was all my fault.
Mm.
And saying, life just punched me in the face. No, I basically stood in front of this problem, grabbed it, and pushed it into my own face, right? And I think some
So
people
wait, wait,
do
wait,
this
wait,
too.
wait,
They'll be
wait,
like,
wait, wait. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on,
I love.
because this is happening right now, and there's a lot of people in my generation, Malachi, who don't believe that you exist, and this is why we had Malachi on here, is
Mm,
he typifies what it happens over in the Apogee Strong Young Men's Movement,
mm,
right? What you're telling me is that your answer is no. Life hasn't hit me in the face because really I've created my life, and anything life's hit me with, I brought it into it. That sounds an awful lot like personal responsibility and accountability. I mean,
yeah,
that's suspiciously, and supposedly that doesn't exist in your generation, according to my generation. I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying, that, hey, life didn't do this to me. I did this to me because you're personally accountable and responsible. Am I hearing you right?
yeah, you are. You are definitely. I see it in friends that I have. I see it in, even people that are older than me, but where they say, "Oh man, my life is so hard right now. There's all these problems right now." And a lot of times the main problem is just that they're not looking at themselves and being like, "Man, all this stuff that I'm doing is causing the problems that I have." And so a lot of it is self responsibility. And there are people I know, they've been given the short straw. They're doing everything they can right, but the situation really is out of their control, and they just have to get through it. But I feel like for a lot of people, it's the problems you're creating, And I can't say life hasn't given me the short straw. I've gotten myself into positions where it was tough, and I had to get myself out of them.
I love this, man. I love it. I know my daughter's only 14, but gosh, it's just, I don't know. Just saying. I'm just saying. Four, 5, 6, 7 more years. Just
That's
before.
another podcast, Matt. This is not the
That's a
this is
whole
not the
different
Apogee
podcast.
Love
Yeah, I'll tell
Connection.
you what.
This is the Apogee
The number
Strong.
of times the number of times people will reach out, strangers that will reach out and they'll listen to episodes that are the young men's calls, and they go, hey, by the way, like Apogee dating service, what's the deal? Like, it's not, I can't even count it on both hands. I can at least say, I can tell you that, which is too funny, man.
I know you're
So,
excited, Malachi, but it's not coming. So don't get too excited. Matt's just talking right
yeah,
now.
right.
It's not coming.
Um,
Let me let me ask you this, man. Were there any things that you came in kind of believing or having a preconceived notion that you're experiencing? One of the cool things about the Apogee Strong program is that you come in and you see, basically once a week you're exposed to some different mentor, someone's had a lot of success in some area in life, talking to you about that success, talking to you about how they achieved what they have, right? And the idea is to expose you, right? Like I've heard it said many times that women make boys. Only men can make men, right? Like only other men can make men, because there's this hardening this happens. There's this reality that happens, and other men bring that to men. So that's why this is a mentor based program of like, hey, let's look at other people's success and failures, because hey, we don't agree with everything every mentor's ever done. You don't agree with everything you ever heard from every mentor, right? But would you say there's something that you came in and, man, that really shaped me? Like this mentor spoke,
mm,
and I really was like, oh, this, I took to that in a strong way.
mm,
Yeah, there's definitely been times where I've been in a call and I felt like they were talking to me,
mhm,
and I think that's one of the great parts about the mentor structure with the calls is it's never the same kind of person. There's hundreds of different courses you can take online where it's some guy in a sweater who has a Corvette outside and he's like this is how you're gonna do something. I can get you into whatever you want in life. And I think every single person has their own strengths and weaknesses. That we all have our areas of expertise. And so with all the mentors, they come in and they're each talking about maybe something a little different. They each have their own area, but the strength of that is you can get something different in each place, and you can build up that foundation in all the parts that you need it. So I mean, I can't think of like any specific times off the top of my head where someone spoke and I was like, oh, you're scolding me right now. But I know there have been multiple calls, and I've got notes in a notebook upstairs where it was like, oh yeah, this is why I came here today. I needed to hear this. And that's just one of the great parts about the mentor calls, because you never know. You go into it and you're like, oh, some guy's just going to talk to me about my 401k, or, oh, this guy's just going to tell me I need to get off of Instagram. It's so much deeper than that. They all have their own stories, and they can all relate with you in a new way.
Yeah, no, it's beautifully said. And you do a really good job, and so many of the young men do a really good job of asking pertinent questions based on those stories too. You guys actually listen to the stories. And so the questions you ask are thoughtful. I always tell you guys, be selfish. I want you to ask the questions that matter to you. And you do a really good job of bridging okay, here's the story, here's my story, and let me find that commonality, and what can I learn from this, and how do I go apply this. And I love the fact that, again, taking taking notes. I'm the same. I take notes on every single mentor call we have, every single one. I'm sitting there writing things down. I have got 1,000 pages of notes over here that I can go back through and just kind of take a look. Oh yeah, that's right, and get these reminders and go back. And it's cool, man, to see with you guys, with the men, it doesn't matter. It's so interesting, because it can be a name that everybody goes, oh yep, I know who that is. And then you get on the call and you're like, cool, man, that was great, and I learned something. And then it's a name sometimes where you're like, no idea who this person was, and they came in and it's like, holy cow, that just blew my mind. And it's awesome, man. Is there anybody, just out of curiosity, is there anybody that comes to mind for you? And there might not be, but like some of your favorite mentors to date, is there anybody that comes to mind for you where you're like, ooh, that one really got me, just out of curiosity?
That's hard, because there
Yeah.
have been so many good ones that their
Yeah,
names just don't come off the top of my head
yeah,
anymore.
100%. Me
But
either.
yeah, it's been those instances where you don't go into it. You should never go into a call like that thinking, what's he what is he trying to tell me just from
Yeah.
his own experience? What in his notes should I learn from? It's like, no, listen to that, but then apply it to yourself. There was almost a moment in one of the earlier calls when I was in for the first time where you mentioned be selfish, and I was like,
Mm,
oh, I get it now. This
mm,
is what I need to do. I need to be like, okay, what has this guy done? Oh, he does martial arts. I do
mhm.
martial arts.
Yep.
What is he talking about that can be relevant to me? And it's
Yes.
been those specific calls. And so there's been a couple of them. Obviously, there's been the ones with former law enforcement guys. Obviously, that's helped me a lot. The
Yep.
martial arts guys, but it's
Yep.
looking for that relation to yourself, and those calls are going to be the best.
Super smart. Super smart, man. Super smart. What about the guys inside too? So like, because we get on there every week, and it's, you got some of the other young men who are there. Some are able to be more consistent than others. You've got some of the men, some of the Apogee men who are in there and relatively consistent. Has there been anybody inside for you that you've connected with, maybe more than others, from a young man or male standpoint, that we want to give a shout out to?
Well, I mean, this is gonna look a little obvious. I gotta say, Mr. Matt, you have been great, and I think it's one of your traits is when people, a lot of times people come up, they'll be like, "Oh, I have this problem," or and they kind of make a blanket statement. But then one of your best skills is you'll say, "Okay, and what?" So people are like, "I have this problem," be like, "Okay, and what?" Or I want to do this. Okay, and what are you going to do about it? And so I feel like that's a lot of times what you can do when you're young, because there's the culture where young people, it's your young years, you can do it, you'll figure stuff out in the future. But I think that kind of it's kind of infected a lot of us. And so what you've been really great at for me is been, I'll say something and you'll be like, okay, and what? What are you going to do? What's your next steps? And that's so important because it's getting from that thought stage to the action stage. So I got to say, not trying to butter you up because you're on the call here, but I mean, you're in a leadership position for a reason, you know. That's been great. And there's a couple other of the men too that have related specifically with me.
Yeah.
I'll give shout out to Mr. Mikey T. He's been great. He's an awesome guy, and they can relate with me in a way based on my interests. But I'm gonna have to go with you overall, Mr. Matt. You're in a position for a reason, and I'm really thankful for all the stuff you've done to help me.
No, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for that. That means more than That is it right there for me. That is it, and that's and I know you know this, but man, I've got your six as long as you want to go. I mean, we're talking 10, 20 years down the road, and you want to just come over here and barbecue, and we can talk about what's going on in law enforcement, and you leading the police force, dude. I'm there 100%. And yeah, shout out to Mikey T, huge part of the program in general. Just helping men and young men, and he's got a law enforcement, the law enforcement background there too, man. And the undercover work that he's done there. So yeah, a whole lot of amazing humans inside, man. I appreciate
Let
that
me
very much.
let me ask you this, Malachi. So one of the parts, yes, mentorship's a big part of this, right? And then having Socratic conversations and really learning to uh, think critically for yourself, right? We're big believers in freedom and sovereignty, but of course, with freedom comes responsibility. So you teach both sides of the coin, right? I mean, we if we want to be free, we have to be responsible, and in some ways, one comes before the other. They come at the same moment. They are the same thing. They're made of the same material, right? Here's my question to you though. Another part of this program is having peers, like having other young men trying to find their way to manhood at different stages. You're obviously towards the high end of the age rank because we go up to 18 and you're 18, so you're aging out, right? Where we have young men as low as 12, right? What has been the value of that community of having? Because I will tell you, having been a mentor on a call, having run this for a while, I'm always amazed on the call at how a 13-year-old boy will ask one of the most insightful questions I never would have thought of
Mm.
and change the shape of the conversation for me. This is me as a 49-year-old, adult. I'm always touched by like, wow, these kids are really taking this in. It's not just, but what's been the value of that brotherhood to you, right? Of having
Yeah.
peers inside of that.
Mm-hmm. 100. Yeah, totally. I feel like there's a lot of sometimes a lot of us we get stuck in kind of our own friend groups. So I'm with people that are 17, 18, 19, maybe 20, something like that. And the problem with that is we're all going through our lives. We each hit certain stages and we all are dealing with certain things at that period of time. And if you're just around the people who are fighting the same battles as you're not going to be as good of a fighter if you're not hanging around those who've already beaten those battles and give you tips to get through it. And then at the same time, as you get older, you kind of your problems get bigger. The challenges you face are more consequential. And I feel like a lot of times you can get too focused on that sort of thing. And so then you lose sight of really the basic stuff. And that's where the younger guys can be really helpful. So it's the age range that's been really great. There's a lot of kids, I'm older than them. And then there's people that are a lot older than me. And there's so much you can get from each of these people. Like you said, I've been in calls and I'll ask a question. I was like, that was a pretty good question. And then one of the youngest guys on the call will come up and just blow everyone's mind with a deep question and be like, okay, I'm learning from you now. And it's just that diversity of thought that comes with different age ranges. And so it's always great just to have all these different people thinking and talking together with their different ideas. It just makes everyone better.
It's so
Well,
good.
what's crazy is Matt and I were talking, right, about when we were in high school, like 1,000 years ago.
Mm.
And, what's crazy
Crazy.
is we had all these different groups, right? So it's like the heads, the preps, the jocks, the nerds. We all had words for our groups or whatever, but we didn't have these. We
Mm.
didn't have these cell phone things. So when we were at lunch sitting next to someone in a totally opposite group, I couldn't just disappear into a world where everybody agrees with me. So instead, what will happen is eventually, after eating whatever ham sandwich or whatever they had at lunch, you would talk and you would start talking about stuff that you wildly disagreed with. I mean, he may love, Slasher Rock, and I was more of like the Erasure Depeche Mode kid, so like we don't match, but we're both sitting here. There was a lot of times, and we had nowhere to retreat to where there were a bunch of people that agreed with us, and so we would start talking, and over time, like I told the story the other day of the stoner who introduced me to Led Zeppelin, and man, I love Led Zeppelin, but I never would have been engaged with that had I not been able to kind of hang around with people that I never would have picked to hang around. Why?
Mhm.
Because, well, I had nowhere to go. And I think one of the things that's cool about Apogee is it exposes you to lots of different people. And we start seeing the value in lots of different people. Because there's not
Mhm.
one way to be free. There's not one way to be sovereign. There's not one way to be a man. There's as many ways to be a great man as there are men alive, right? And maybe as many men who've ever lived and who will ever live. But it's
Yeah.
about finding that great man in you. And I love that about this program is we honor each man's
Mhm.
journey, right? There are, yeah, of course, there's going to be similar steps taken. And at the same time, the worst thing that we could possibly do, no matter how great a guy Matt Beaudreau is, if Malachi Smith comes out as Matt Beaudreau Jr., right, that would be terrible. In fact, if Loudon Beaudreau comes out exactly like Matt, that also would be terrible, right? we,
Smart. Yeah.
we're about creating that man, how he wants to create, not in the
100%.
image of something we see of like, oh, be like this.
Yeah, that's extraordinarily well said. It was well said. Shout out to Depeche Mode. I think that's the first time that's ever been on the show too. So, which is so solid. I don't know, Malachi might
I
not have
don't
been
look
having
like I don't have the
yeah,
Depeche Mode look anymore. You would never
yeah,
guess
dude, I don't
that
think you do
now.
either. Not at all. But shout out to Depeche Mode. I'm not gonna lie, my kids actually know some Depeche Mode because it does get played every once in a while around the house. But yeah, Malachi, what you were just talking about too, and yeah, Kev, extraordinarily well said. I'm thinking back to a couple of weeks ago. Shout out to Charlie Warner, right? Charlie's a young buck, and we ended the debrief. So we ended the whole call because we'll do a call. We'll do an hour with the mentor, and then do an hour where we debrief and check in, and then dive into conversations. And it was Charlie dropping the mic on some advice to a median Jeremiah. And a median, hey, by the way, Charlie's like, I think 13, I think just turned 13. And a median is a phenomenal grown man, phenomenal leader about to retire from the military. I mean, and we're talking like a stud of a human, but it was the advice from Charlie to a median at the end of the call on transitioning out of the military back in leading his family that everybody just went, okay, there's that. Mic drop on that, and that ends that call. Like it's just so rad that those things are there. But the way you painted that picture, Malachi, was so good because we talk about going up. If you're climbing the mountain and you're going up to the top to the apogee, you are looking ahead at those that have laid down the footprints, right? And you're like, okay, I can follow in those footprints as long as I need to, and I can also start to forge my own path here. And I always have the ability to put a hand up and have them help me. And that's huge. But at the same time, we got these guys down here, and I'm going to have a hand back too. And I'm going to grab those guys and go, hey, man, come along. Right. And that is the journey right there. It's letting yourself be led, but it's also not forgetting to lead, and I think that's what those multiple age groups, what you were speaking to right there, Malachi, I really like it. So
and
let's
and
pretend.
we're one of the only organizations I know who leads young men, and a good number of the calls that happen every week are led by young men for young men with no adult there, meaning
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
they're self-organized
Yep.
battle calls. That
Yep.
that's pretty awesome.
It
There
is.
is a trust in all directions.
So last one on my side. If you're talking specifically to a young man or even the parents who are like, interesting. They might be a little skeptical, might be nervous, might be, they're just kind of looking at the mentors, the calls, all the different projects, and like, I don't know. For one reason or another, I'm not sure if I want to go this route. What is your honest, what would you be your honest feedback to any of those people, no matter what? Like, what would you talk to them about?
Yeah, I think what what the problem would be for someone like that is they're looking at this and they're being like, okay, so this is the structure we got. Socratic conversation, challenge, paperclip challenge. What is a paperclip challenge, right? And they're gonna look at that and they're gonna be like, okay, or I could have my kid do chemistry, right?
Hmm.
And it's kind of the conflict between what they're used to and something new that sounds strange, but they're almost not willing to take that jump. So,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to down anybody here. Of course, educating your kid, that's a big thing, right? There's a lot that goes into that. But there's a lot to that difference. There's a lot to getting outside your comfort zone. And I can tell anyone who takes this call, you might have done a lot of things. What you're going to do is going to take you out of your comfort zone. There's stuff I did, and even before taking Apogee, I was an outgoing person. I was a social person. I'd done a lot of things. I was going to Apogee. I was like, man, this is going to be an interesting project. I've never done anything like this before. So I think if anyone's like, oh, I don't know, this sounds so different. Yeah, that's kind of the point. This isn't going to be anything basic. This is going to be something to help your kid grow by having them do new things. And that's more to the parents' side a little bit. To the young man who wants to do this, or the young lady, whichever course they want to do, I'd say don't go into this thinking of it as a school project. Because what do you do with school? You listen to your lecture, you read your book, you throw it in your closet, and you go outside or you go play video games, whatever you do. You put it away and you forget about it. If you go into these projects and you're just like, I'm just going to try to get through with it and throw it away, you're wasting your time. You're not going into this, you're not going to get anything out of it. You have to go into this thinking, here's something new. I'm going to do as good of a job as I can. I'm going to invest as much as I can. I'm going to try to help the other people here. And that's what's really going to give you value. If I had gone into this trying to, just do the bare minimum, I would just scraping through, not checking up on the message boards, not trying to help anybody. It would be so much less to me. Just the Apogee. Yeah, I do that, and then I do apologetics. It's nothing to me. It doesn't mean anything. So to any young person or even adult who wants to go into this isn't just a duty. This isn't just something you're assigned to do and you have to get by to do something else. You should find some kind of meaning in this. Go into it, work it as hard as you can, and at the end of it, you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, wow, that was a lot more meaningful, and you won't miss all the stuff you possibly would if you just try to do the basics.
I mean, I I couldn't say it any better than that. I mean, this is going to go, obviously, we'll put this on YouTube. We'll put this out as a podcast. I just want everybody to understand if you are wanting to reach out to Malachi, I will be representing him in any fashion that you would like to reach out. I just want to throw that out there. But no, it's sage advice, man. This is there for a reason. This is there on purpose. Everything is, and I'm not saying there's a never, ever, ever will say we've got it perfect. There's this perfect roadmap, but man, it is a roadmap that parallels the skills needed in life. It's funny you say chemistry. Look, chemistry can be a great thing. Understand, I like cooking in many ways is chemistry. I think there's some phenomenal things to understand, but what we do from an academic standpoint matters in chemistry to a subset of the population. And that's great. And then there is a certain extent that we push it from a schooling standpoint that does not matter to the rest of the population. That's not really something we can argue against. What we try to do the best of our ability is make every single one of these things matter, but just because the things matter, the person has to make it matter to them as well. They just have to be willing to do that. And I think you
So
articulated
to
that beautifully.
give a very tangible example of this as we wrap up,
Yeah.
Malachi, you mentioned the paperclip challenge,
Yeah.
right? So some of the things we do here are going to get you uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Briefly describe what the paperclip challenge is and what was your experience with that? Because what I love about Apogee is it really prepares young men and young women
Mhm.
separately to be ready for life, not just to know some stuff that maybe they'll use one day, but it's actually everything is applicable. What was the paperclip challenge, and what was your experience with it?
Yeah, I'm not trying to spoil anything. If
Yep.
if if you're gonna take this course, I don't want to lay it all out in front of you. There's a lot of fun challenges in here. There's interviews that were a fantastic time. The paperclip challenge is just something different, right? And so it's a really simple idea. You're gonna start with a paperclip. You're gonna take that paperclip, and you're gonna go up to strangers, and you're gonna say, "Hey, can you trade me something better for this paperclip?" And you have a month. You can do it throughout the whole year, but you have a month where you have to do this. And you're going to go up and you're going to see how high in value you can go. There is no limit, there's no stopping point. The only thing limiting you is how far you're willing to go.
Mhm.
And so this challenge was one for me that was one of the main ones where I was like, "Oh boy, I've never done anything like this." This is something new. This is something crazy. And yeah, I learned a lot with that challenge. It, interacting with all the people, sales in a way
Mhm.
was something new for me. I hadn't done a sales pitch kind of thing. Going door to door, also new. A little awkward, but since I'm an outgoing person, it wasn't terrible. Uh, but and then having to talk with all the different kind of people you're gonna meet. I went door to door. That was my strategy to try to meet the most amount of people in a place where they would have items to trade. And you knock on one door, this house could look run down. And the person that comes out, the nicest person you'll meet all day. This house could be spick and span. They got a perfect lawn. They come out and they don't care. They have no interest in what you're doing, and you have to talk to all these different people. And so it was just it expanded my mind in so many different ways. It taught me so many different things about sales, about trading, about kind of making judgments on people based on how they look or the property that they have. It was just an all around really really fun experience. So no spoilers, but
Cool.
if you're
But
gonna
wait,
do
and
this,
what'd you
hey,
get? But what'd you get? I want to know after the
what I
month.
Yeah.
get.
Where'd you land?
So I started with the paperclip, and I ended up with I have someone gave me a toiletry bag, so I have a toiletry bag. I have a fish tank, a good sized fish tank, and then I
That's
have a
awesome.
pair of Jordans that are worth like $140. And
That's
so
awesome.
me, I
Nice.
that's great. I went into the project thinking, oh man, I'm about to get a truck. I'm going to house and do that. Go into this project with the highest expectations. You might be like me, and you might not get as far as you thought you would, but still at the end of it you learned a lot. And
That's
so
right.
it was a great time. Like I said, the people that I met were just
So
incredible. I had one guy,
you
he
got some
went in
Jordans
and
out
out
of
of his house 3 times trying to find me something to trade because he was just so
Okay,
invested.
hold on.
So yeah,
So
it
you
was
also
great.
got three meals and a new friend out of this too. This is great. By the way, the challenge does not specify going door to door. For those of you listening at home, that's something Malachi came up with himself because he said, where can I meet the most people where they have something to trade? This is all self-generated, self-guided.
so rad.
Look, Malachi, nothing left to say, but this is exactly why we brought you up. You are definitely a story from the summit. You're definitely someone who exemplifies what we're doing in the Apogee Strong Young Men program. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being around. We're just really happy to have this time with you, and thanks for just being the man that you are. Period. That's enough.
Yep.
Thank you.
Apogee man through and through. Proud of you, sir.
Hey, I appreciate it. This has been so much fun, talk on the calls with you guys. It's just always a great time. And so I came in this, I wasn't nervous at all. I'm like, hey, I'm having a conversation with Matt and Kevin. This is going to be a great time. And I've had a great time talking with you guys. It's been incredible. Thank you for having me on.
That is another story from the summit.